Hello and welcome to Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. I am your co-host JP John Paz with the two-man power trip of wrestling, and of course, the star of the show is the former WCW and ECW World Tag Team Champion, one of the greatest bookers and minds ever in the history of professional wrestling. He is Mr. Kevin Sullivan, and Kevin, we have a special guest with us today.
Yes, we do, and he's been a dear friend for a long time. One of the most successful guys I've ever met in the wrestling business. He's a Renaissance man. He's a man of all seasons, and I've enjoyed his pleasure for a long time.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's and the feeling's mutual. I first met Kevin years ago when I first broke into business, and now, first and foremost, huge fan of his work and everything that he's done. And then when I got first involved in wrestling, I had the pleasure of meeting Kevin up in the Boston area for the local promoter Tony Rumble up there, and that's where we first met. And from that point on through WCW, and even after WCW, Kevin and I have kept contact for years, and it's an honor and privilege to sit under the learning tree with this guy. He's also a Renaissance man. He knows so much about so many things. Wrestling is all but just one thing, and I think Kevin will agree. There's so many times we talk, and it's not even about wrestling. It could be about anything: art, history, politics, whatever, movies, comic books. He knows so much about so many things, and it's always an incredible pleasure to sit under the Kevin Sullivan learning tree.
Well, I should have sat under the Chris Ford, Devin Storm, Crowbar learning tree for a lot longer. A lot of people don't know this. He has his own physical therapy company, probably the largest in New Jersey. Probably makes more money as a physical therapist than anybody in New Jersey. His lovely wife is a dietitian. So between them, they make our gross national product go up by 12%.
And I love my job. It's cool. I love the therapy just as much as I love wrestling, and I feel very lucky, blessed. I don't mean to preach that I'm able to do both to this day. Both careers are awesome.
Yeah,
I just want to say real quick though, Kevin, sorry to cut you off. The former, just to kind of intro you in, former WWE World Tag Team Champion, Hardcore Champion, Cruiserweight Champion, formerly known as Devin Storm, formerly known as Crowbar, the ever-evolving and the intriguing, intriguing Devin Storm, Chris Ford. So I just want to get that out there just to give you an intro. Anybody out there that doesn't realize it's you.
Who is this guy on here? Who's this guy with the long hair? Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story. This is when I was booking WCW at the time, but Eric was nice enough that we sent talent to different places. And he would have been one of the greatest bookers of all times, I believe. And I think Chris will agree with me. John, did you know Tony Rumble?
I know of him. I'd never met him personally, but I heard many, many stories about him.
I started Tony in the wrestling business. He had never had a match. He lied to me. I knew he lied to me, but he did it with a great face. He was a Boston boy. And I said, okay, go out there. And it was an enhancement match. And Tony and I became friends. And this is when you used to call up, what was those shows called? Would you get the people to buy the tickets? Do you know what I'm talking about?
The prepaid show or whatever, the paid shows?
There was, you called, there was a phone number, and they would answer it. Chris, do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm trying to figure. I know what you mean. I know what Tony did. I know how we ran, but he was He was doing that thing up in Boston. I just don't know if there's a name for it. Yeah.
Well, he ran a town that my great uncle owned a little town in Billerica, which was nothing. And he drew like 5,000 people, and he would
Yeah, it was
draw
crazy. Yeah.
Crazy thing was, I'm booking for WCW, and this is how times have changed. The internet. I beat Jimmy Snuka for their world heavyweight title. So can you imagine if that had happened today? But anyway, Chris was in those cards, and every time
17 years old. 17 at the time when I first met you.
Wow.
Yeah, every time you went up to Tony's, he sold out. And one thing about Tony, he was a very fair guy on payoffs. He
Sure.
was a really good guy in payoffs. So, I mean, guys were going up and making some money, and he had a great little territory. He had a local channel, and when he died, our office sent flowers to him, and that's where I met Chris. But where I'm going with the story, Chris was just a young punk at the time, and we're all
with a
sitting,
bad mullet, with a really bad mullet.
yeah, and the baby faces are sitting in one place, and the heels are sitting in another place, and I'm sitting with the heels, and it was one of those places where Tony was getting paid for the wrestlers to come in, after party show. And I'm watching him. Chris is on the other side. He had his books with him, and he was studying. And I'm watching the guys, and they're drinking like Miller Lite or Jack Daniels, whatever. And I see that he orders a glass of wine, and I look at the glass of wine, and it was about 2 steps down from Pouilly Foussé. And you don't sell Pouilly Foussé by the glass, you're going to sell it by the bottle. And I was saying, this kid at 17 years old is a very smart guy. First of all, he's studying in front of the guys. And I heard some comments made
Getting
about
ribbed, yep.
and them saying, well, obviously he's not going to make it. And he did make it big. And look at him over there drinking that silly wine. He knew more about wine, and that glass probably cost more than all the beer they had. So, like I said, he was a man of all seasons.
I had one, and I enjoyed it. That's it.
Yeah.
I was responsible.
Yeah.
And now you're drinking wine all the time, cutting these awesome videos and these awesome promos, just like that, holding the glass.
I had to have it because I did a podcast last night, and it was great. It was a lot of fun, and I got a bunch of messages said, "Where was the wine?" Because this is what you're doing now. I had a Propel water because I had worked out right before the interview, and they go, "Oh, we're so disappointed. We were hoping to see you doing this." So
yes,
here I am.
Is there an art to the way you hold it too? Because you hold it like an old king.
Nah, it just feels good. Maybe it's a little snooty. I don't know. It just feels good like that. I don't know. Maybe there's something to it. I don't know.
Well, I think that's how most people that know how to drink wine that
Yeah.
way. They hold by the stem.
Yeah.
John, what do you think of the promos?
Man, they are great. It's almost like, I don't know, it's so different and so unique. I think that's what makes it so cool as well. But it's like, wow, where did this come from? Crowbar, I don't remember, usually cut like maniacal promos. These are like really well thought out. It's like so different for you, but so cool. And I like this like different part of your character.
This idea goes back years, and I've revisited it throughout the years. After WCW, well, first we go to Tony Rumble. Kevin noticed about the wine, and he commented on that. And it was from that point on that we became friends, and we became in contact and stuff like that. WCW folds, and the XWF does a few tapings. That was Jimmy Hart with somebody. I forget who the money guy was. And I spoke to Kevin. He goes, "Wear your tights. I have this new idea. he goes, it's really basic. He goes, you do all this wild stuff as Crowbar, and he goes, and I know Chris Ford likes doing this. Chris Ford, that's a healthcare provider and a student. He, for whatever reason, he loves doing this wild stuff. He goes, you remind me of Hannibal Lecter. He goes, so we're going to see where this goes, but you're not going to be crazy Crowbar with the ripped jeans. He goes, you're still going to do your crazy stuff, but we're going to maybe explore a more sophisticated character outside of the ring. And unfortunately, XWF never took off, but I always kept that idea in the back of my head. Unfortunately, when you do independent shows, there's spot shows. There's often not an opportunity to explore characters, promos, and stuff like that. So the idea was always there, but I've never really had the opportunity to really pursue this character. There was no outlet for it. There was no platform. And then COVID happens, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I love wrestling. I still love wrestling. I did, I will, I'll always love this. And during this time, there's no time to physically wrestle. So I was mulling around my house. I go, I need something wrestling related. And I thought back to Kevin's idea years ago, and it was always kind of there in the back of my mind. I said, let me kind of explore what I could do with this. I have the time. There's no shows going on. And I'll backtrack to where last December I showed up for Ring of Honor. I did 2 shows, and that was cool. And I'm very busy between work. I love my family. My family takes priority over everything. I love my wife, my kids, and then my business. But they recommended, they go, we know you're on Facebook, but a lot of wrestling stuff happens on Twitter. I had a Twitter account since 2017. That was pretty much dormant. I just didn't have time to do it. So I kind of transferred my very little spare time spent from Facebook to Twitter. So I get on there and I start doing pictures, clips, matches, chiming in on stuff. And what I kept getting from these kids who, it's no fault of their own. They weren't alive during WCW. Some of these guys, who are you, boomer? And and I'm saying to myself, it's kind of funny because my kids are the first one to say, people around town that know me, my wife, they go, you are the furthest thing from a boomer. He goes, you're still jumping off of ropes and flipping and this and that. He goes, but so I digress. So I was trying to think how to introduce this character that had been on the back burner since, what was the XWF, 2001, 2002, maybe, Kevin?
Yep.
And, yeah. And I said, you know what? I'm going to address these little snot noses, called me boomer, and that magically became the first promo. And I did it, and to be totally honest, and I had a great time. It felt good. It felt normal. It felt like another part of myself, because I like getting on a night sports coat or a suit. I like getting a shirt. I like having some wine. I said, you know what? I'm gonna put an amplifier on this part of my life, and I'll see where it goes. And here we are.
I love it.
And the other thing, and John, I know you know this. He talks about current things, and he talks about some of the good things that are in the business and some of the ridiculous things that are in the business. Like he was one of the first guys to stand up from Matt Hardy that almost got really brain damaged, if not worse. And I mean, he came out and said that. And just recently, he came out against, not against, but for Gerald Briscoe. Mm-hmm. And in case these young people don't know Gerald Briscoe, I'll explain Gerald Briscoe. Gerald Briscoe The Funks and the Briscoes were the hottest thing in the 70s and early 80s in the professional wrestling. And if it wasn't for the Briscoes selling their percentage of Georgia Championship Wrestling on that Black Saturday,
Yep.
Vince would never have gotten Georgia Championship Wrestling, where he ended up selling it to Jimmy Crockett for $1 million because he needed it to create WrestleMania 1. Without that, there would have been no WrestleMania. And Gerald had worked for him for 36 years.
That's amazing. Yep.
36 years. And some people say, well, he's worked for 36 years, he should retire. Gerald started wrestling when he was 5 years old, like his brother. It's all he knows. He's successful in other businesses, same as Chris. He has the largest body shop, or one of the largest body shops in Tampa, but he still has the wrestling bug. And
Sure.
I heard Cornette say that it would not upset their budget at all if they kept them on a retainer of $1,000 a week. They are paying guys at their school at the center who will never make it. Big money. Gerald Briscoe, a Hall of Famer, 36 years he gave to one company, and they let him go.
Yeah.
And they let him go, and it wasn't that he was always behind the scenes. Remember, he was Vince's stooge with Pat Patterson.
And he played a great character. It was so comedic. It was wonderful. It was fantastic what he did.
He got them through some tough times. And when he was out looking at amateur wrestlers, John, he probably could, at his day, when he was 50, he probably could beat 3/4 of them because he was his brother was 3 times NCAA champion, and Gerald was a 1-time NCAA champion. These guys were really wrestlers. So he brought that up. He's brought the dive up. He's brought other things up. He's brought up, which is a controversial subject, he brought up some guys that don't look anything like a professional wrestler. And a lot of people like it. A lot of people maybe it gets too close to home. What do you think, John?
I love it. Everything he does, even just the way you're standing and the black and white and everything is done perfectly. I love it. But what do you think about Briscoe, Chris?
Well, this is on topic but off topic. As a healthcare provider, one of the things that I saw when outside of the Gerald Briscoe situation itself was on the internet, you had people chiming in, well, he was there for 36 years. He should, it's time for him to retire. It's time for him to do X, Y, and Z. Speaking from my personal experience, I see people in all walks of life. I'll see Mr. Smith, who's maybe 62 years old, just to grab an age, and he comes in for his knee. I don't see him for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And in that time, he may have retired. And I see Mr. Smith after all that time, and Mr. Smith might look horrific, or Mr. Smith might look great. And I've been doing physical therapy over 20 years. And I have this saying, and I tell all my older patients, especially, I've seen people in their 60s look like they're in their 80s. I've seen people in their 80s look like they're in their 60s. And it's the ones that retire and they stop doing everything that they hit that downward spiral and they decline. People, if they have a passion and they want to work and they want to continue to be active and contribute,
Yep.
and especially if they're good at what they're doing, I don't think people should be pressured into being forced out. And I think Briscoe, with all his experience and his enthusiasm, should not have been forced out. And everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I don't agree with, and a lot of them are young kids. Well, he's there 36 years. He should move on. F you. Who are you to say when this guy should move on? He's made his career. He's paid his dues. If he's not ready to move on, who are you to say when he should move on? That's all I'm saying. Is just because there's a certain number doesn't mean somebody has to be forced out and put into retirement, because a lot of the times that's what kills people, when they stop doing something they're passionate about and they stop doing stuff. That's just a huge pet peeve of mine, when I see somebody is let go of or fired. Well, he's been at that position for how many years? He should retire. That's not your call. And I'm sorry, I'm just very passionate about it, because it's a bullshit thing.
And I like to say this too: intelligence doesn't run out. Being smart doesn't run out.
No,
there is no label. Being intelligent is going to expire when you hit 61 or whatever.
No. Is Gerald Briscoe going to go out there and wrestle? No, but he still has a wealth of knowledge to contribute, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be contributing somewhere soon.
And in that group of guys, and I may be overlooking some, John, but the only guys that could probably replace him is Brock Lesnar, who's not going to take that cut and pay.
Yep.
And the other one is Kurt Angle, who no longer works for them. And Kurt would be a great, I believe, I've never met Kurt, but I believe I've seen his matches, which are just tremendous. I think Kurt would be a great teacher, a coach, or a guy in the back helping putting things together.
And Kurt can still go a bit if need be.
Yeah. Who's going to replace Gerald Briscoe? There's going to be a hole. And because there's going to be a hole, they're going to miss somebody that's a great amateur wrestler that's going to become the next Kurt Angle. And because of that, he'll end up at AEW or Impact or Ring of Honor. And that one mistake could be the crack in the ship that hit the iceberg, meaning the Titanic.
You might miss the next rock.
Yeah.
Yep. And Briscoe was responsible, really, for getting Kurt Angle, Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin, those guys to sign all those good amateur wrestlers. So he's out there being the great talent scout that he was, and still is.
Absolutely. And I'm going to give a plug. MVP, Bobby, and Shelton. There isn't a hotter group right now in pro wrestling. A, they look like wrestlers, and B, they can go. And like you said, John, they were brought into the company by Gerald Briscoe. Who else could have talked to them in their language? Because I was an amateur wrestler. Some amateur wrestlers have this aversion to professional wrestling, and a guy like Gerald, who had a great amateur background, his brother they're in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and which is, as you guys know, is connected to the amateur wrestling, and that would break the ice. Who are they going to get to break the ice? So that's just my take on it.
It always helps to have a liaison to help facilitate that talk. Big time.
Yeah.
So just kind of changing gears a little bit.
Sure.
Now, Chris, I know you from the New Jersey wrestling scene. I'm from Asbury Park, but I grew up
Awesome.
in the Homedale area. So when you guys would do, Hazlitt and all, even Asbury, all the areas. I mean, I've seen you a lot, especially you and Ace Darling. Were you
We
booked by Kevin Sullivan when you and Ace Darling showed up on Nitro and wrestled the Outsiders for
Yes,
the tag titles?
Kevin brought me in the very first time on Nitro, and it was just an incredible opportunity. It was when Nitro was an hour show, and he booked me against Conan for the U.S. heavyweight title. I was still full time in school, but doing the indies on the weekend, and I get this incredible opportunity. Thank you again, Kevin. And I was on the same show. What the show had Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, Arn Anderson. So talk about being a college kid on that program. Mind completely blown. And yeah, Kevin brought us in, me in that time. And then a few years later, he brought Ace and I as a team to go against Hall and Nash on Nitro. And then we did quite a few of the Saturday night shows as well.
Kevin, what did you think about bringing him in? You just remembered him and say, "Hey, I got to bring him in. Let's give him a shot here in WCW."
What stood out to me was that he could get reach not only wrestling, but he knew he had something else in the world to do. And I've often figured this out because my wife does it. If you want somebody busy to do something, give it to somebody that's busy. If you give it to me, I'm going to rake the yard maybe next month. But Chris had it, and Chris had it young, and he was just the right guy at the right time. And the other thing which was interesting, Chris, if you remember this, Conan gave you a very good match.
A lot of stuff and a lot of wild spots too.
Yeah, and what was good about that, John, was I remembered because when he's working with Tony that he would do lucha libre stuff. Well, I didn't want to bring Conan in, and at that week, I didn't want him working with another lucha libre guy. I want him work with an American that could do that spot, and Chris filled the bill. Like I said, Chris was he was a Renaissance man, and he took to all kinds of wrestling. And again, Conan gave him a. I think he had a talk with him, and I think that Conan saw what I saw in him, and he gave him a very good match. And then when Ace came, they were a very good team. If they had been a little bit older, or if Chris wasn't going to school, they could have grown into something big because Ace was excellent too.
Awesome. Yeah. I also Ace came up with a bunch of guys from New Jersey, myself, Simon Diamond, who became who at the time was Lance Simon, Reckless Youth, guys like that. And
Tom Carter,
when we get together, we all say the same thing. Out of all of us, and I mean this, Ace was the guy. He just never got that spot, but he was the guy. He could have a great match with this wine cork here. But going back to the Conan match, do you remember the description of the match you asked me for? And you go into Renaissance Man, and you said you said you do all that crazy shit. Conan does lucha libre. Part of the show was we have these car crashes. Can you do a lucha libre car crash? And that's what we tried to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. So
lucha libre car crash, which was merging a lucha with like the chairs and the steps and all this stuff, and that's what we came up with.
So John, when you were watching wrestling in New Jersey, you were seeing guys that became superstars before they were superstars, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
You got to see a lot of good talent in New Jersey at that time. when I was looking for I hate to use the word enhancement. When I was looking for guys that weren't under contract, I would either go to the Boston area, the New York / New Jersey area, because most of them could wrestle because they had been at Johnny Rogers School or been with Tony Rumble or other places. And we got to, I mean, I remember the first time I ever saw Bam Bigelow on a tape, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, he was doing cartwheels at 400 pounds.
Yeah, so many good New Jersey guys. Bam Bam, obviously, but like the guys with Chris, Ace, you mentioned Reckless Youth. Tom Carter was great. Mike Quackenbush,
Yep.
Lance Diamond, aka Simon Diamond. So many good New Jersey guys, kind of almost under the radar. A lot of you guys, but it was good to see you of all of them. You kind of broke out, and obviously you made it big as Crowbar in WCW.
Yep.
And the Wall, Jerry.
Yeah.
Oh, Jerry
Wall.
Tweed. Yep.
Yeah.
Cannot forget about the Wall. Made it big too. Yep. And of course, Chris Candido. I mean, there's a bunch of guys, but it was good to see you. So, what did you think about the Crowbar character? Did Kevin bring you in as Crowbar, or where did that kind of whole thing come out?
I was doing the Devon Storm neon green thing first. I came into Nitro. I did a few Saturday night shows. I was still full time in physical therapy school. Then I went to ECW for about a year, and then after that, I was back and forth doing light heavyweight stuff for WWE. I was part of their first light heavyweight tournament, wrestling Taka Michinoku in the first round. And that was kind of a nightly thing where Cornette would bring me in, nightly shows, Shotgun Saturday night. For all intents and purposes, enhancement, but they always gave me stuff, made me look strong, made me do, really good stuff. Then I graduated school. I worked full-time for a year in a hospital. And then about a year later, I got the call to go down to WCW. And at that time, I had changed my hair from blonde to black. And the whole purpose for that was, at that time, there was Christian, there was Edge, there was Test, there was all these guys, blonde hair. I said, okay, I have to do something to stand out. Everybody got blonde hair. I'm going black. So I did that. I grew a goatee. I went down to WCW. I was at the power plant. And at that time, I was being groomed to be a new, evil, gothy cruiserweight. And I had been working on the Saturday Night Show, doing matches like that. And then there came a time when David Flair, I'm not sure the exact story, but from what I was told, he was popping a rating for whatever reason. People liked watching David Flair. He was running around backstage with a crowbar, smashing people with it, stalking women, Kimberly Page and others. But although he's getting a rating, the whole thing is David really couldn't wrestle all that well. So they came up with an idea to have him be in a tag team, and yada, yada, yada. I get a call. You're not going to Saturday night. WCW Saturday night. You're going to go to Salisbury, Maryland for Nitro. We're going to tape this video of you. You meet David Flair at the gas station. He's being chased down by Vampiro and the Misfits. You run them off. He asks you what your name is. You say Crowbar. He's whacking people with a crowbar, so that's the instant connection. You both get this maniacal laugh going, and you're off and running. Now you're this new pairing. And the following week, they had this kind of a lethal lottery tag team tournament, and we won the tag straps. It was mind-blowing. I tell everybody else, I always took the Bill DeMott, and I got there that night. I go, Bill, they got me getting a tag strap. He goes, stop. Don't put it over. Stop. You're going to look unperfect. Don't put it over. I know you're excited, but don't put it over. How the hell can I not be excited? So I held in my enthusiasm. Inside, I'm busting. And David Flair and I win the tag titles that night. It was crazy. With help from Arn Anderson, which another total mark out moment, you know?
That was great. Yep. And it's like one of those things where David can't really work, but you're a good worker. So they got it right. I mean, they got to put you guys together because he's got some weaknesses that you can kind of cover up, I guess, right?
Yeah. And truth be told, I was having a great time doing the cruiserweight thing. I love that style. I love doing what I was doing there. This gothy, evil Devin Storm, but this granted me a character, like on one of the two main shows, an actual character that I was able to explore, being a nut and having fun, and I had the opportunity to wrestle a lot because David would get in and out just enough to do something, but at the same time, we protected him, and it was just a great and fun opportunity. It was a great time, and David, super nice guy. Daphne, great gal, and we were three kids just having a great time. It was a lot of fun.
Kevin, were you booking or was that Russo booking that?
I had just stepped down and Russo had taken over. But later on, when he was working with the Wall, I was booking that then.
And even when Vince brought me in, I always pick Kevin's brain because, as I said before, going way back when, and the opportunity you have to sit under the Kevin Sullivan learning tree, you do it. And I always picked his brain for advice and stuff like that. It was Kevin's idea to do the Gordon Soley impression on the commentators. It was Kevin's idea, taking the 3 bumps before the match, act like a total nut, and all these things worked. They were great.
Kevin, with Crowbar and David Flair, when you look at that pairing, you see like, okay, Flair, for whatever reason, he's too green. We got to put, like you as a booker, you got to cover somebody's weaknesses and flaws.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, that was when Stacy Keebler first came in,
Mm-hmm.
and that was his attraction, where he was stalking her, and then Paige's wife, and that helped him. Even though he was green, it helped him. But having and with Daphne, she is a girl that never got her due. I don't think she was that screaming lunatic that looked like that if you were in a bar, she was going to jump on your back. And Chris, one thing about Chris is that he's always loved the business, and if a guy loves the business, he doesn't take a night off. I think I've said this to you before, John. One of the greatest things I ever heard in my life: the Tampa Bay Buccaneers came to see Mongo McMichaels wrestle, and I was coming out of the ring, and he had them all in a circle, and I stopped to listen to him, and he said, "Just remember this, guys. NFL stands for not for long. So that means you don't take a moment off. You don't take one play off. You play at 110% because it's going to be over quick. So you want to enjoy every second you can." And that's what Chris had going for him. He always wanted to do the best he could. I try to do it myself, but some days I probably half-ass phoned it in, and I regret that. But Chris never phoned it in. And here's the amazing thing: was him and Daphne really pulled David along, and David absolutely ended up doing a lot better in a shorter time when he was whipping his father. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yep.
With Hogan. So they did their part. They got David ready to wrestle his father. So it was an amazing thing.
It is interesting that David was never really that great of an athlete wrestling wise. Obviously, his sister has a different mother, but she kind of took the Rick gene and became. Did you ever kind of wonder, like, man, how come David's not as good of an athlete? Obviously, you're never going to be as good as Rick, because Rick's the greatest of all time. But you ever think, Chris? Do you ever think, like, man, it's kind of like surprising that maybe he's not a little bit more athletic?
Well, all the guys joked about it, and David was a great guy, and he knew it himself. He knew his limitations. He always asked for help. He always asked to work out before the match, get in the ring, grab ring time. When they first told me I was going to be teamed with David Flair, one, I was thrilled. I had never met him, so I'm thinking, wow, this guy's going to be really stuck up, probably Ric Flair's kid. Nicest, most down-to-earth guy going. A lot of limitations, but he recognized it, and he just wanted to get better. He was in a tough spot because, like, how do you fill those shoes? But he knew he was limited, and he did the best with what he had, and he always worked harder to get better regardless. He knew he was never going to be his dad, but he worked hard regardless, and he tried, and he persevered. He took ribbing. Guys ribbed the shit out of him about being Ric Flair's kid, but not being like Rick. And he took it all in stride. And that period with David and Daphne, who also just, I believe she answered a casting call to be his girlfriend. And then we were traveling around. She shared that she had a gymnastics and cheerleading background, so we started to teach her stuff, and she's doing Frankensteiners that they called the Franken Screamer. And again, we were three kids thrust into this spot that was a whole lot of fun. The characters themselves, you could pretty much do whatever and it would fly because we were all nuts. And I spoke about this last night with someone else. Crowbar was probably the closest you could get to Chris Ford. And the reason being, it started off the first couple shows a maniacal gas station attendant, and then it evolved into this guy. And that was more me expressing how much fun I was having in this opportunity that honestly a lot of people will never get to have, and I felt very grateful to have that spot. It was really a great time, and very, very nothing but fond memories of that time.
And you would be cruiserweight champion and hardcore champion too. So I mean, nice run for sure.
Sure, absolutely. And
can I throw some? Can I throw something in there, guys?
Yep.
You know, when you said about David, the difference was David didn't have his dad when he was younger because he had Charlotte and Reed already. So, you know what I'm saying? I remember Charlotte was a swimmer or a gymnast. She was always into sports, and Reed was a great amateur wrestler. So I think that might have had something to do with it. But he's absolutely right about he took all the ribbing from the guys, and I could imagine that Chris thought this guy is Ric Flair's son. He's going to think he's bigger than that. I always thought, boy, Rick really made this kid a perfect gentleman. And I got to admire Rick for doing that for David.
Yep.
And there's some funny stuff with David too, beating up the mailman. Remember when he's delivering the mail? If you remember, or I mean, he had a lot of like little funny stuff. So he was a good ratings getter. You're saying, Chris, right? You're saying that he was kind of popping ratings.
Yeah, and one of the most fun that I had this whole gimmick. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it. It's on the network somewhere. But we did skits over the course of a show where we went to New York, and we went in a porn shop. We went in at FAO Schwartz, and we were playing the big piano, like from the movie Big. You know the piano you play with your feet. And then there was another skit where there was a smaller Statue of Liberty statue on the sidewalk. Daphne sees it, thinks it's the Statue of Liberty. Vince Russo says, "Yeah, that's it." And I go, "Hey, every time I ever see the statue, it's always in the middle of water." And he goes, "Yeah, they move it around." Yeah, they move it around the city so that everybody gets a taste of the broad or something like that. And it was just goofy, funny stuff. And I'll share this, which was really cool. It was in New York. So we flew from Thunder to New York because they were going to air these clips the following week. And I lived in New Jersey at the time, northern New Jersey. So I had flown there. I had no ride back. So we're going through New York in this gigantic stretch limousine. It's talent, crew, whatever. And this is, I mean, the biggest limousine I've ever seen. So I have no itinerary to get home. I'm in New York City. So they go, yeah, bring him home. So I get to drive home and in this gigantic stretch limo. And so I'm looking like king shit here. And it's not that I've never been in a limousine before, but this thing was like half a block long. And I'll just never forget that because everybody was coming to the doors, looking out, looking through the windows. Who's getting out of this car? Yeah, it was me. It was just really, really, really cool.
Really well done stuff, though.
Yeah,
fun stuff.
Yes, a lot of fun.
Now, what do you both of your ideas as far as like Vince Russo? What did you like, Chris? What do you think about it? And Kevin, what did you think about Vince Russo?
Well, go ahead, Kevin. You can go first.
Okay, my thing is, in my head, it's too late to criticize people. Some people like chocolate ice cream. Some people like strawberry ice cream. Doesn't mean anybody's right or wrong. I was raised in a different wrestling environment. Eddie Graham, Vince Senior, Jim Barnett, and I've mentioned this to you before, John. I think the three of the greatest wrestling minds of all. And then I had Mark Lewin, I had King Curtis, I had Gary Hart, and superstar Billy Graham. So I don't. It's easy to throw rocks at glass houses, and it's too late in the game for me to do that. I think he did the best job he possibly could, and some of the stuff was good, some of it wasn't, but none of us do it perfectly because if we did, we turn to page 44 and know exactly what to do. Mm-hmm. So. And obviously, there's a lot of companies now can't even find page 44, right? So,
say the least.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. So going back, I was there as the gothy version of Devon Storm, a more evolved, evil Devon Storm, being on this trajectory that would bring me into the cruiserweight division. I think Kevin will remember that. That's where I was kind of going. Jimmy Hart was slowly building me up on Saturday night to eventually go to Nitro as a bigger, more violent, more intense cruiserweight. And if I remember the story correctly, all this was going on with David Flair at the same time. We had finished something up, or I had flown into town for Saturday night. We were all staying at the same hotel. The guys came back from Nitro. I went to the hotel bar to get something to eat. And as I was told by Ed Ferrara, Vince saw me walk through the door. I had my hair down, leather jacket and whatever. And he just liked my look. And from that point on, I became chosen for Crowbar, I think. And it was a great opportunity, and it got me to the point. I never thought I would have a character. I always thought if I would ever be on WCW, that it would be in a cruiserweight capacity. And at that time, I was great with that because I was a huge fan of that style. Going back to my New Jersey work, I thought cruiserweight stuff was great. I enjoyed watching it tremendously, and that was cool. But I never thought that I'd be a character, like a guy with a backstory and a name, and I have wacky catchphrases and that. So he gifted me this character, which was fun. So if it wasn't for Vince Russo, there would be no Crowbar. And I'm eternally grateful. I love Vince for that. He wrote some great stuff. And he always gave me the license to, this is what we got. What do you think your character would do though? And some things he let me do, some things he said, nah, that's not good. But he always gave me the opportunity to change a line or how I looked or this and that. Now, conversely, WCW changed Power time and time again. And Kevin got Power sometime after that. And he crafted this awesome feud with the Wall. And, just on a total side note, which it meant so much to me, my first match ever at Mike Sharp's gym was a battle royal where me and Jerry Toot, who was Big John the Lumberjack, who became the Wall, we fought the whole battle royal. And then Mike Sharp had me feud with Big John the Lumberjack for months later. So it was really cool going from Mike Sharp's gym to network TV and doing this feud. And we came up with these crazy bumps and stunts where we both jumped from the announce table. We both jumped from the ring through the announce table. He choke slammed me through that. He choke slammed me off the Tron. We did all this crazy stuff. And they had it booked where the Wall and I were going to be the co-main event in a pay-per-view with some crazy tables match, choke slam with tables match that Kevin and Ed really let me craft myself with their input, and it was ready to go. And then we had to change in Power again. I remember the call, and this never happened. It was we were supposed to do a huge bump at San Pedro Island. Do you remember when you called me for that? And it was an outdoor show. The entrance was going to be all tents and stuff like that. So outdoors, they wanted to start Nitro with helicopters circling the Tron. And it was going to be me up there at the beginning of the show, challenging the Wall to come get me, yada, yada, yada. Kevin goes, do you want to take the bump off the top of the Tron? I said, and I'm pretty ballsy at this point, and even I had to think about it, but WCW had a great stunt guy, Ellis. It was drawn out how we would do it, how we would practice. I would have been given 2 weeks prep time to learn this stunt. I was told that if the stunt couldn't be done safely, we'd scrap it. And I was ready to do this. And then sometime in there, Power changed again, and Vince took over. We had this cool thing going with me and the Wall, and I recall on interviews, Vince saying he didn't watch the product at all during his hiatus. And the thing with me and the Wall was just dropped. And I think it could have been spectacular. We had some really excellent stuff planned. And then I went from that to doing I actually started to decline and just become a nameless cruiserweight guy being used less and less. But I'm always grateful for the spot. Hindsight's always 2020. He's coming on, grabbing Power again. There's much more larger priorities than Crowbar. There's Ric Flair, there's Lex Luger, all these guys. I get it, but for me personally, he created the character, and I believe that he was also responsible for pushing the character to the wayside. But at the end of the day, I've done more than I ever thought I would do, and I'm eternally grateful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't believe I forgot to mention you were trained by the legendary Iron Mike Sharp,
Yes.
who is just an absolute legend in the business, especially in the Northeast, especially and even further up north. But man, that's got to be a trip getting trained by that guy. Oh my God,
that was Mike was a great guy, but he was an odd guy. Kevin, right? Mike, if you go to a wrestling school in this day and age, the trainers are probably in shorts or sweats or whatever. Mike Sharp would put on his ring tights, his ring boots. He would wear the forearm band, and he would oil up to train you. It was, and at that time, that didn't seem odd to me because I was new. I was just a kid. And now I'm thinking back, and I'm like, that was friggin' crazy. But at that time, I didn't know better. I thought that's just what guys did. This is his character. This is how. And now that being where I am now, I'm saying, wow, Mike was nuts.
Yeah.
Full ring gear, no t-shirt, tights, ring boots, forearm band, oiled up like he was going to have a match at the Garden. Hand to God, it happened every night.
Yeah.
Kevin, what's your experience with Iron Mike?
Great guy, though. Awesome, great guy.
He was a wonderful human being, but we always heard, the obsessive compulsive disorder. Locked in the Boston Gardens where he's taking a shower. He was in What shocked me was his death because he was in such physical shape.
Couldn't blow him up.
He would go get there. We'll say if the show, the Garden show would be at 7:30. You'd have to be there at 7:30. The Garden show would start at 8:30. This is Boston Gardens. Mike would show up at 6, and he'd be training until he went on. He usually went on first. If he didn't go on first, he went on second. So he trained right up to the time he went out. Squats, push-ups, these bands he had, the iron spring. He'd come back, and he worked 10 to 15 minutes hard. He'd come back and he would continue working out till the main event finished. They would go in the shower. Mike would still be training when they were in the shower. After they were all dressed, Mike would go in, and this is no joke. Mike was, he was closed up in a couple of buildings where he had to call people to get him out. Crazy.
And here's a true story too. And I don't know if you've ever seen it. Mike he didn't have a duffel bag. He didn't have one of these wheelie bags that guys have their gear. He had like a hockey bag, a giant goalie equipment bag. And inside this bag was many, many small Ziploc bags. OCD. Everything had its own bag. Had its own spot. This guy was immaculately clean, immaculately neat. And here's something else too. And it's just because we're talking about Mike Sharp, you notice different things when you're actually involved in wrestling. And I've gone back when I was a kid. I knew of Mike Sharp. He was basically an enhancement guy that I saw on Saturday morning TV, and I don't mean that in the negative way. I saw him on independent shows, and he would have great matches. But you never really, when you were a kid watching wrestling, you were registering the glitz and the glamour, the costume, the high spots. That's a lot of things, and that's great. I watch Mike Sharp wrestle now, and I watch it. I say, if you're doing a bunch of high spots, say big power bomb, boom, you sit there, 1, 2, you have an opportunity to catch your breath. Big move, boom, 1, 2, you have an opportunity to catch your breath. You're selling. Mike Sharp punched, forearmed, stomped, but he didn't stop. And as basic as that may look to somebody, to an untrained person watching, that takes incredible cardiovascular to start. He would knock you down, pin you, kick out. He'd pick you up, bring you to the corner. He didn't stop. There was no time to sell. When Mike was on you, it was like flies on shit. And watching it with a trained eye now, you see what incredible cardiovascular this guy had. There was no time to sell. Mike was going to pick you up and beat the shit out of you. And if you watch his matches, I watch it now and say, how is he doing this without stopping? He was an absolute machine. Kevin, right? And you're responsible for that as well. When I watch some of your stuff, Kevin, just like a pit bull, pounding the shit out of somebody without stopping, that blows you up. That takes a ton of cardio. That takes more cardio than big move, boom, 1, 2, kick out, sell. When you're nonstop clubbing somebody, you better have your heart rate going. You better have your cardio up. Right, Kevin?
Yeah.
Big difference. Big difference.
Does anybody know how Mike died, John? Do you?
No, I'm not
No,
sure.
nobody. I know he died, but there's not much news on it. There's not much info. I want to find out. I don't know.
And it would feel like it was delayed, right? I feel like the announcement, I feel like he died and it was very delayed. We didn't know for a while.
Yeah.
I
had heard that after he retired, a few places asked him to come out. And when he was done, he was done. He just didn't want to come out anymore. That's what I heard. I heard many independent groups wanted to bring him in, and he says, "Nah, he was just gone." I'm not sure if he was sour on the business or not, but he just, when he left, that was it. He was done.
Well, one of the things that both of you gentlemen brought up was he was a wonderful, wonderful human being.
Awesome. Great guy.
Yeah.
And I was his first student, number one.
Wow. Didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I had learned that he was opening up a school in 7 months. I found out, and I immediately went to work in a catering hall. I worked double shifts on Saturday, Sunday, worked Saturday night, and I saved my pennies because I was going.
Nice. Now, as far as kind of just getting everything out there, because we've had you on here for a while, awesome talk. Love kind of revisiting your career, being a longtime fan and fellow New Jersey native. So please, give us all your your plugs and everything you got going on. Twitter, these awesome timeless promos, everything kind of going on in your world right now.
I'm pretty much on Twitter exclusively right now at WCW Crowbar. In the future, I might explore other. I just don't have time right now. Like I said, I love my family. I have a business. I find time through Twitter to do this. I'm going to continue to do these promos. I don't know where they go. Me and Kevin got a lot of really cool things in mind that'll blow people's minds. I think. I always say when people ask me about the business these days, and I say the athleticism is on a level that's never been seen before. Incredible athleticism. And if I'm to be vulgar or blunt, I remember what I watched growing up, and the athleticism is incredible, but all the bullshit that made wrestling fun, if that's cool to say or not, I don't know, that made wrestling fun and entertaining, a lot of that's gone. And I'm trying to hybrid the fun with the fact that I could still perform in the ring at a more than respectable level. This guy could still go. But I'm trying to bring back something that I feel has been lost. Kevin's been an incredible asset to me, his guidance. Like I said, whenever you can sit under the Kevin Sullivan learning tree, please do. It's awesome. Don't know where it goes. Got a lot of great ideas. And right now we're just having fun. But we'll see where it goes.
Awesome. Good stuff. And
thank you.
Kev, any parting words for the awesome, formerly known as Crowbar, formerly known as Devin Storm? Any parting words, Kev?
Yes, I do. I think that one of the things that either excites people or pisses them off is the truthful words. Like when he talked about Matt Hardy taking that horrible bump. I don't blame the promotion. I blame the guy he was performing with and the doctor that said he was cleared. I don't blame Matt at all. Matt showed himself being a true professional, trying to get through it. And then there's other things that the artist formerly known as Crowbar has brought up, and he's right on. But let's see in the next few weeks, everything he's been talking about has been coming to fruition. So this should be very, very interesting. So, and John, I know that I certainly appreciate you having the artist formerly known as Crowbar on, and you New Jersey boys stick together. Why don't you guys talk about it? Because I'm sure you can
Yeah.
give them some points,
Yeah.
John.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
I
Matt
love
Hardy
it.
thing was the Matt Hardy thing. That's been the most viewed promo that I've done, and it. I think the reason why is that it's very organic. This character is cool, but there's a lot of reality in that. After Matt got hurt, what struck a chord with me was I went on Twitter and you see all these fans, and I don't mean that in a demeaning matter. Fan, Matt Hardy should hang it up or this or that and be more careful, or Tony Khan didn't follow proper protocol, or there needs to be a doctor, this, that, the other thing. One of the things that has made AEW so popular was that Tony Khan has given these fans what they've wanted. And it's nothing different than going back to ECW years ago. Fans love this crazy stuff. They praise it when it's done right. And more often than not, it is done right. But the fact is, it's higher risk than the normal stuff, and stuff happens. So when I woke up the next morning and I saw this crap, Matt Hardy needs to be more careful. He has a family. Tony Khan shouldn't be doing matches like this. This is the stuff they asked for. This is the stuff they praise. And that became the body of work that was Hypocrites. That's the name of that promo, was Hypocrites. And as much of it is in character, there's a lot of reality in that promo. And I think that's something that's very it's something you see a lot in today's wrestling. There's character and fantasy, but that was laced with a lot of reality, and a lot of people didn't like it. I got a few responses. We never told him to take that bump. Yeah, but if 6-7 months prior you praised some crazy stuff he did somewhere else, you're just as responsible. And you know what? Accidents happen. Get off the guy's ass. Get off Tony Khan's ass. Get off AEW's ass. When we get involved in this business, we try to minimize the risks, but we all know what we're getting into. That's one. But two, we're giving the fans what they've come to demand and expect. And when we do, don't, and it's good to express caring, concern, but it was these holier than thou keyboard warriors spewing crap about a situation that they know very little about. And I'm a nice guy. I love wrestling. I love the fans. But in certain instances, stay on the other side of the guardrail, because that's where you belong. There's certain stuff, although you have Twitter and Facebook, your opinion doesn't count. It doesn't count in certain matters. And this is one of them. Stay out of it. But I love you guys.
Can
Well said.
can I just go one step further?
Sure.
You know, I love baseball, and I always thought it should have been. There's only been one team that's had three players in consecutive order to be in the Hall of Fame. It was Ted Williams, left field, Carl Yastrzemski, left field, and Jim Rice. Well, I'm a big baseball fan. I thought the fourth one should have been Kevin Sullivan. I know nothing about pro baseball.
Hmm.
I did play some pony league, and I got taken a look at, but I couldn't hit a curve ball. So I should have been keeping my mouth shut about this guy is only throwing 97 miles an hour. And I think Mr. Ford was being kind. This demographics, they can't make up whether they want violence or they want everybody included and everybody gets a trophy. In my day, you had to win it. There had to be a winner. So please don't knock a company that you were so excited to be there with Tony Khan, the Rhodes brothers, Billy Gunn, who I think is one of the most terrific athletes of all times, Moxley, Jericho. Uh, the list could go on. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but don't go and say, "Oh, it's time to hang it up." Don't tell anybody what to do because you have no knowledge of this business. Period.
Nice. And that is a great stopping point for the show. Of course, you could follow us on Instagram at Taskmaster Talks. You can follow me at Two Man Power Trip on Twitter and Instagram. Also, check out the website, tmptempire.com. And of course, Kevin Sullivan has a pro wrestling tee store, prowrestlingtees.com. Check that out. Also, check out Double Hell t shirts as well. So, this is John Paz from the Two Man Power Trip, Kevin Sullivan, Taskmaster Talks, and the artist formerly known as Crowbar,
Fun
signing
time.
off.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yes, thank you. And you have a good one. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this week. And we'll see you next week right here on Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan.
Good night, all.